Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Play Task Force Admiral. I'm doing another random battle here because I'm still working on making myself good at the campaign, or the scenario mission. So we're gonna have the threat access from the west. We're gonna try with maybe one. No, I'm thinking 2 carriers. Yeah, and 1 enemy carrier. Have the wind from the north, and let's make it a random cloud cover. So we'll just do that. Anyway, let's get started. So the demo here has gone through a couple of updates. None of them really, big, but for example, they've added an airfield and some search aircraft that are going to come out of a ball. So if you drift too far north, then they might find you. But I played this game a little bit more recently, just kind of getting the feel for it, how it plays, how you set up like combat air patrol, how you set up strikes and things like that. So I'm still learning a bit. And of course, I've read the manual. But we're going to see how we do here. Anyway, I want to take this time to reflect a little bit on the current state of Task Force Admiral, what the scope and intent of the game is, and how it compares to some of my previous ideas that I had had on this game and where it was going. Now, unfortunately, this video is the first in about a month or so since I first played it a bit. Though, like I said, I played it, I just haven't recorded anything lately, but I have played it more recently. But I stopped playing it for a little bit because I just wanted to get done with my Let's Play on Destroyer the U-Boat Hunter. And boy, as you can see, where I was at the end of that game, I was pretty darn tired of it. But anyway, so moving back to Task Force Admiral here, just setting up my my search here. From what I've heard from people who've played this game more than me, is that around the midpoint of those strikes, you don't want more than about 25 miles between those aircraft, because after that they'll have difficulty spotting anything really. So we're going to send out strike out there to the west, because we just so happen to know that that's where the enemy is going to be, somewhere there. And I'm going to set up cap here. I've been watching a lot of RamJB, his videos on this game. He does some pretty good tutorials and stuff on this game, so generally, according to him anyway, you want to set up your combat air patrol around like maybe 50,000 yards away. So when I switch the scales, right, this patrol area that I'm setting up in should be kind of nearly off the, yeah, like that, like off the chart there. So that gives you enough space for the cap aircraft to be vectored to intercept any incoming snooper or threat or whatever and things like that. Let's turn on the contacts and the wind and the weather and the radar and all that. One thing I wish you could do better is more easily edit the waypoints of your task force, because for whatever reason you can only edit the last waypoint that you set. All right, let's set up our strike. Give it a couple of escorts for them. Let's probably just send all of them. Yeah, all of our dive bombers, both squadrons of the scouts and the bombers, and we'll send about 6 torpedo bombers. We don't have a target yet, but I'm gonna set it up for early spotting and deferred departure. Then we greenlight it. Now, since there's no target selected, they will not actually take off until I select a target or a waypoint for them to go to. All right, sun's coming up. Our search packages are about to get underway. They're pushing the aircraft back. Wait, no, this is Lexington, so yeah, they're preparing the whole strike there. Now, from what I understand, Yorktown is generally better for setting up routine air patrols like your combat air patrol and your search planes, because they have more elevators on it and it's more efficient at its air operations. So the Yorktown has 3 elevators, whereas Lexington only has 2. So Lexington will be good for setting up like mass strikes, since you're gonna have time to set those up and they won't interrupt the other combat air patrol launches and recoveries and all that. So Yorktown is better for that, since her air operations are more efficient, given that she has more elevators. She also is newer, of course, than Lexington. Alright, search is about to get launched. There we go. Now, an early interview with the developers at Dry Dock Dream Games, when I first started following this game, noted that Task Force Admiral is a quote-unquote command simulator. And they said, quote, "You're not just a pair of eyes floating above the map, you are there in your flag plot using tools of the trade with the limited field of view and scarce amount of knowledge one could expect in the midst of battle. This time, command is not abstracted, it is simulated," end quote. So thus far, what I've seen with the beta demo is pretty accurate to what they described. And I'm going to talk more about this in just a minute. So Task Force Admiral takes place very firmly in the operational level of naval warfare. As a flag officer, you manage the overall operations and direction of the task force, you tell the ships and planes where to go, and you let the AI do the rest. You're not jumping into the cockpit and leading these strikes in on the Japanese carriers, you're not dogfighting with the Zeros or firing the guns on the ship. Now, yes, there are plans in the Kickstarter of this game, as well as the current fleet defense gameplay mode, that do allow you to take control of like planes, and eventually they plan to give you controllable AA guns and controllable ships. But I'll get more to that in just a minute. But right now, what I'm talking about is the nominal player's role in this game mechanics, in which case you basically just set up things and you let the artificial intelligence do the rest. So in short, the player literally does no trigger pulling in this game. Now that being said, the developer Kickstarter does have plans to add in playable aircraft and AA gun mounts and even possibly individual playable ships. And they say that the game options will be scalable to allow for gameplay similar to like battle stations if that's your thing. However, it's clear that their intention never was to recreate battle stations. Alright, we got a snooper out there, so we're gonna make sure our cap is going after him. Yep, they're headed that way. Now, in contrast, the developers said they wanted something more along the lines of like older games like Task Force 1942, Carrier Strike, etc. And this gets into what I would call like the abstraction of command and interactivity. So to paraphrase the late wargaming theorist Peter Perla, traditional wargaming isn't about, seeing who's going to win battles. It's really about examining human decision making and how we react to a game's events. So it's not about finding out which weapon is the best or which weapon is going to penetrate the most armor on this tank or this warship or whatever. War games are not about finding out who will win battles using the best tactics or whatever, but those things are done using systems analysis and field exercises. In strategy games, the player takes the role of a commander on some particular level, and they have to make decisions that affect the course of the gameplay. Now, combat is very heavily abstracted and often modeled on probabilistic dice rolls or random number generation, which is basically what, computer games like these are, except you just don't see the dice roll. However, tabletop strategy games are not meant to have flashy graphics or sound effects. In contrast, video games, graphics to some degree are required. All right, let's see if we can get this snooper. I overshot it. So like I said, with video games, graphics to some degree are required, and a higher level of interactivity with the game mechanics is pretty much expected with video games. Now the problem is that modeling command in a realistic fashion in video games is very difficult to portray, and it's even more difficult to make interesting to the player. Now, at Task Force Admiral, this game does not require you to have quick reflexes, and you don't get the thrill of blasting targets and racking up a kill count or whatever. Now, understandably, this does seem to narrow down the interactivity of the game, even for an RTS-style game like this. Many things in this game have been abstracted, and it's very narrowly focused, given the player's role as a flag officer. So, I mean, when you break it down, Task Force Admiral, really, once you get everything set up in the game, you basically just control the camera and you watch the big cinematic spectacle. Now, from my understanding, the developers do plan on adding more granular control over units and allowing the player to change the game's options for the mechanics and the AI assists in the game. So in that way, you can play it more along the lines of battle stations if you want. But as we can see here, the original intention is not to make it like that. Oh, nice. Got him. All right, shot him down. But anyway, to continue looking at how this game currently plays, to some people, I think they're kind of turned off by it. Like, they wanted something more like battle stations or World of Warships, that kind of gameplay. So to them, this game is probably really boring. Now, personally, I've played both those games. I played Battle Stations Midway and Battle Stations Pacific. I played World of Warships, and I personally never liked either of those games because while they do play fast and they're fun for a bit, I found them to be way too arcadey, right? Didn't really like it. I'm gonna send off another search from Yorktown there. I think we need to head search further to the northwest there. Yep, because that's where they're coming from. All right, we got a bunch of aircraft coming in, so let's look at our mission here. Where's my... we have to select the other one. Okay, there we go. I have to select Lexington, then we can end the mission. Now, we don't know because we haven't spotted them yet, but we know they're coming from somewhere up there. Let's say about there. All right, 348 nautical miles. Well, it is within range as long as it's within that red circle there. So let's have them take off. All right. Good to go. But anyway, as I said, like games like Battle Stations and Midway, they're too arcadey and too removed from reality for my tastes. And as a result, they felt very artificial when I played them. To me, what they lack is those games lack immersion. In contrast, games like, say, Silent Hunter or, U-Boat, or even Destroyer the U-Boat Hunter to an extent, and Carrier Command 2, those games have really good immersion because they model the tactical realm of warfare. You're standing on the bridge of a ship or a submarine. You're seeing the ship pitch and roll as it moves through the waves. You're ordering the guns and torpedoes to be fired at targets, and you can take direct control of those things in those games. But that being said, those games are tactical simulators. Task Force Admiral, on the other hand, being an operations simulator, is more abstract in terms of its immersion. However, that being said, based on its attention to detail, historical and otherwise, that I've seen so far, along with the graphics and the way the game does a really good job of depicting scale, I feel that it still has good immersion. So let me explain. The way this game depicts scale is what makes it immersive in my opinion. The ships, the number of aircraft, the weather, the vastness of the ocean environment. I think this game just really does a good job. Even though you can zoom far out of the game and make the ships look really tiny or can zoom really close in, this game does a really good job of giving the player a sense of how huge the Pacific is and how big these ships are and how small everything is in compared to the vast ocean. All right, our strike is getting underway here from Lexington. Yeah, so I do feel that this game gives a really good sense of how huge the Pacific Ocean is, even though the game is only technically modeling a part of the ocean. Now, the aforementioned Battleships and World of Warships games, on the other hand, I feel really don't do well at creating this sense of scale. Not to mention that their arcadey style of gameplay, the fact that the ships feel like they're moving on a glossy, smooth plane and they don't handle like ships really breaks the immersion for me. So in my opinion, games like those feel like you're playing with toy ships in a bathtub or something. Whereas this game, they have an actual physics model to the ships. There's a physics model to the ballistics, the size of these aircraft and the ships, and just look at how you can't see. All you see is just ocean around you. So the nice looking weather effects and all that. I mean, this game feels like you're out in the middle of the ocean. And I just never got that feeling with, you know, games like Battleships or World of Warships. Maybe it was to do with their graphics or something, or maybe the fact that everything just happens so fast. I think this game also gives a sense of scale by giving a good time scale to it, right? Time is not really compressed in this game. I mean, unless you use time compression, but I mean, you know what I mean. So you can play this entire game in real time, and it would take you hours upon hours or even days to do some of these things. So I think that realistic real-time time scale is also what gives it a good sense of scale as well. Oh, they're bugling over the 1MC there.
Man all torpedo defense stations.
Yep, that's another good thing with this game. The good sound design as well. Like, you'll hear these bugle calls. You'll hear announcements over the 1MC. You know, you'll hear, like, the collision alarm and stuff being sounded every so often, so. Again, realistic attention to detail with these sound effects and the doctrine and the tactics that these ships use. As I said before in my first video I made on this, right, this is probably the most realistic depiction of World War II aircraft carrier operations that I've seen in any video game. It's really, really damn good. And it's that attention to detail that really sets the feel for this game. Now, going back to the player's role as a flag officer in command of the task force, I've had a discussion with in the comments on one of Rue 1945. He makes a lot of videos on like sea power and this game as well. And I was kind of discussing with him, like, the reason why we like this game is that you don't have control of the individual aircraft and ships. Now, again, even though you'll eventually have the option to have more granular control over these things. Oh, unidentified surface force, bearing 135, range 226 miles. We found him. Okay. Well, looks like we're in luck, because that's where our task force is headed. They're headed in that direction anyway. Or where the strike package anyway is headed. Our fighters are looks like they're attempting to intercept those aircraft coming in. That is definitely a strike coming right at us. We have scrambled the fighters. I should have scrambled them sooner. Get them up in the air. If you get enough fighters up in the air, you can blunt the incoming strike quite a bit. Let's see, Fenton, looking for targets. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying, because the player is hands-off from the actual trigger pulling, this is where the idea of a command simulation comes in for this game, and why it's so hard to accurately model a player's role as a commander in video games. Those look like torpedo bombers going in. So the problem with a lot of these video games, even real-time strategy games, is that they give the player way too much control over units that a real commander would not or could not possibly have in real life. Anyone who has ever been in a leadership role or a command role knows the struggle, right? Right? You have to train your people well, you have to communicate your intentions and that of your superiors. You have to plan for contingencies and make sure your people are in the right place, they know what to do. But once things hit the fan, it's your job to keep the big picture in your head and to trust that your subordinates can get the job done, because you cannot be everywhere and do everything all at once. But so many games fail at that because they give the commander all this little role. If you want to jump into this soldier's boots and run around and shoot the bad guys, you can do it. You know, if you want to jump into this aircraft cockpit and fly the aircraft around and shoot down the fighters and ward off this attack, you can do it. So no, a commander can't do that. They wouldn't be doing that. So the game makes a concession, obviously, here in that you can select these units and follow them around with the camera, but again, you do not have direct control over them. Now, even though there will be parts in the game where you will eventually be able to control these things, but you still have the option of just being hands-off with them and letting the AI do the talking for you, so to speak. Now, Lord Nelson, right, was famous for being able to communicate his intentions and trusting in his subordinates to get the job done. So that's why he is probably one of the most successful naval commanders in all of history. Well, we're shooting down planes, but we got torpedoes coming at us. Now, to give you another example, if you ever played the game Radio Commander, it does a pretty decent job of, modeling that abstraction in command, because all that game is just you staring at a map and you're receiving radio reports. Ooh, looks like Yorktown took some torpedo hits there. But all you're doing in Radio Commander is staring at the maps, you're receiving radio reports from the troops in the field, and then you're ordering them around and making decisions based on the reports you get. So Task Force Admiral is kind of like a naval version of that, but it has fancier graphics. I mean, heck, if you wanted to, you could probably play this whole game from just the flag plot and never once go to the 3D world view if you wanted to. Yeah, Lexington's taking some hits there. Die bombers. Oh, man. You're wrecking the deck. Well, that's a crazy sight. See? Is Yorktown's rudder jammed? It might be. Yorktown's just steaming a circle around Lexington there. One way you can tell the difference, if you don't know what to look for, right, is that Yorktown has a different shaped hull because she was developed from a battle cruiser. Or sorry, Lexington was developed from a battle cruiser, so she has a different shaped hull. Another thing with Lexington is that her smokestacks are distinctly rectangular in shape. They're very tall and they're separated from the island where the bridge is. So that's a way to tell Lexington apart. Furthermore, Yorktown has this big, huge, like, tripod mast near the front of it. So. All right, well, we got ourselves in a bit of a kerfuffle here. Looks like our aircraft are engaging. This is Brassfield. What are you shooting at? They got that guy? Oh, yep, they splashed him. Good. But anyway, yeah, the developers have mentioned that if you turn off all kind of the nice assists and all that, then you literally will just play this game from, like, I guess, maybe the flag plot, and you're only able to see what happened in, like, in a game replay or something. So then they said you can be your own Samuel Eliot Morrison and do your own historical, examination of what went down in the game if you had to, after the fact.
Aye, aye, sir.
Anyway, so I do feel that Dry Dock Dream Games also ultimately achieved their goal of creating a command simulation. The one thing that I think would make it more accurate, not to mention much more boring to play, would be to model the Admiral's staff and the crap ton of paperwork that they would actually produce. And that's just the staff. I'm not even talking about the entire task force. Now, understandably, when it comes to video games, there's a need to balance out realism with entertainment. Video games are supposed to be fun, and the player expects a certain level of interactivity. And as I mentioned, in its current state, you don't really do...
Engines, all in its link.
Okay, Yorktown has no propulsion. Her steering is shot. She's got moderate damage. I think she's dead in the water. So anyway, as I mentioned, we got torpedo bombers coming at Lexington there. In its current state, you don't really do much in this game aside from set up missions, create searches, launch aircraft. You get basic waypoints, and you change the formation of the task force and basically control the game's camera and watch the fireworks. That's really all you do in this game. Now, thankfully, the artificial intelligence for the aircraft in terms of their dogfighting and their bombing attacks are really good. It's not perfect, but we are going to take torpedoes here. But it's pretty darn good, and it keeps the game feeling dynamic.
Enemy aircraft hit. He's going down.
We're already leaking fuel there, so... That destroyer is pulled up right alongside Lexington. We go. Look at these torpedoes here.
Enemy aircraft hit. He's going down.
We're going to take some torpedoes. Oh, that one might hit the... Oh, wow. It slammed right into the stern of that destroyer. Looks like we're going to take another one. Maybe, and... No? That was weird. I guess it was a dud or something. Would have wrecked our starboard side screws anyway, and our shafts. Yeah, Yorktown's not going anywhere. Yeah, so, I mean, this game has pretty good AI. It could use a little more tweaking, I think. For example, I still think the fighters are a little bit too aggressive when they chase down bandits, and they tend to really overshoot their targets a lot. But the good AI of this game, I think makes the game feel very dynamic. So despite the fact that you have kind of limited interactivity in its current state, I still feel the game has a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with this game later on as it develops. What the final product will be at that. Oh, man. Keep bombing my aircraft carriers. Now, it's also worth noting... Oh, man. Hit right on the island, too. This is my one good aircraft carrier. You guys are wrecking it. Now, it's also worth noting that surface combat has not been fully implemented in the game. I remember when they first released the demo, they briefly took it out and then they put it back in, but it's not, from my understanding, it's not really it's not fully modeled yet. So we haven't seen really exactly what surface combat can truly do in this game, at least what they have planned anyway. We also have not seen how the game models submarine and anti-submarine warfare, or how air bases will work, or how strikes on land targets are going to work, using aircraft and ships. I suspect that air bases, land-based air bases, will be fairly easy to model because they're just runways and they're hangars and revetments and they don't move, so... I'm also curious to see how the game will handle surface and subsurface combat. Now, so far, a lot of hard work and time has been put into, making the aircraft artificial intelligence pretty decent. It's not perfect again, but it's better than most other games out there, like Arma 3 or Sea Power, for example. Oh boy. Got more torpedoes coming at Yorktown here. There's 3. She's gonna take more torpedoes. She's not moving. She's dead. Oh boy. All right, brace for impact, boys. Ooh, it's gonna leave a mark. Anyway, but yeah, it's still left to see how ships are going to fight each other with guns and torpedoes, how submarines will behave, and how ships and aircraft will prosecute submarine contacts. Now, I've seen the AI decision tree for ships prosecuting a submarine contact, but we know nothing about how they'll behave, tactically, in the game. So, these 3 domains of naval warfare, be they surface, subsurface, and air warfare, they're all different and they require different tactics. I imagine that the programming for the AI routines... Oh, what do we got here? Okay, yes, we know where they are. We're headed right for them, looks like. Good. But anyway, I imagine the programming for the AI routines, for them to be historically accurate for all three of those types of warfare would be a huge task. So, you know, if you're going to make the submarine warfare realistic and the anti-submarine warfare realistic, I think they've got the air warfare down pretty well. Pretty good. So, it's left to be seen how the other two types of warfare are going to play out in this game. Now, I previously wondered whether or not ships will try to use, like, accurate surface warfare tactics in the game. Like, yes, I mean, the player could probably make those tactics happen if they knew them, but can the AI use those tactics? For example, like, in the destroyer and the cruiser battles around the Solomons, they demonstrated the different tactics and doctrines used by the Imperial Japanese Navy and the US Navy at the time. Because the Japanese heavily trained to fight at night, and they preferred to hold fire with their guns to make long-range torpedo attacks with their destroyers. Now, in contrast, the American ships still preferred to close in and use their guns, partially because they were overconfident in the use of their guns, and also because they just did not know the long-range capabilities of the Japanese torpedoes at the time. Alright, so our strike package is getting close. It's somewhere off there, but you can see there's a lot of cloud cover over there, so they might not see them. It's somewhere off on the starboard side. Now going further, you know, like radar for surface ships, that was a new thing at the time. It took time for the Americans to learn how to fully leverage the capabilities of radar itself. Now, reportedly, surface combat will be handled by the player from the tactical view. Now, I previously wondered where this had gone, right? I'm like, did they just take it out of the game? But it's still in the game, right? It's accessed by pressing the space bar. So the developers have directly compared the tactical view to like the sensors manager in the homeworld games. So, well, since I played through those games, right, I just had to remember, oh, space bar. It's like the sensors manager. All right, our measly, 6 torpedo bombers are making their attack runs into their IP, their initial point. I don't think they're going to survive or they're going to hit anything. Mostly they're just sacrificial meat. Now, as for submarines, again, we don't know how the game's going to handle it. Japanese submarines prioritize warships, and Japan had a pretty poor submarine strategy. In contrast, United States submarines were ordered to undertake unrestricted submarine warfare, which basically meant anything flying a Japanese flag, be it a merchant ship or a warship, was fair game. Most of the United States submarines targeted merchant ships with the strategic objective of starving Japan of resources and imported materials. So my question is, are these historical differences in their tactics going to be modeled in the game in the artificial intelligence? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, one thing that has changed from my previous prognostications, if you will, is that I do not think underway replenishment is going to be a thing in this game. Now, I say this because I have not seen any indication that such a mechanic is going to be implemented in the game. Like, yes, the game's ships have finite fuel and all that, and the ammo stores are going to be modeled and eventually depleted, but given that the game is scenario-based, these scenarios are not going to last longer than I think a few days at most. So you should probably have enough bombs and bullets and torpedoes and gas to get the scenario done from the get-go. You won't have to pull your task force back to the rear to a replenishment squadron and come alongside an oiler or an ammo ship to resupply. So I was wondering how that was previously going to happen, and now I don't think this game is going to go that far into the logistics rabbit hole. Even if the developers do create a pseudo-dynamic campaign, which is kind of one of those things on their wish list for their Kickstarter, I still think underway replenishment will not be modeled, since I suspect the campaign is going to be scenario-driven. That is, when the scenario ends, you get the debriefing screen, and your ships just, automatically get reloaded before starting the next mission in the campaign. So that's my thinking of it. torpedoes are dropped. Wow, they're way far from that carrier. They're not going to hit it, and they're dropping bow on. Alright, here are the dive bombers. Now, the developers have said that the game has roughly another year in development, give or take, so sometime maybe in 2026, the full product will come out. So, thus far, I enjoy what I'm seeing, and as I said, I'm really optimistic about what this final product is going to be. Now, I realize I need to temper my expectations, since for all I know, it can still fall flat on its face. I mean, we all remember the hype in the release of Cyberpunk 2077 and how buggy that game was on its release, especially when everyone's expectations were so high. Alright, diving down on the target. Let's watch this from the pilot's view. Got some hits, good. Now another example would be like Destroyer, the U-boat hunter. I mean, boy, all you did in that game was just drop depth charges on submarines and occasionally shoot at them when they surfaced, right? You'd order the escorts around, you'd pick up survivors, and that was it. Now when I first started playing Destroyer, I thought, oh wow, this game is going to be great if it took place in the Pacific and the developers can do this, that, and the other, and you know, you could provide anti-air cover for a carrier, you could conduct shore bombardment for an amphibious mission, right? You could do torpedo attacks on ships with your destroyer and all. I was really excited for it, but in the end, the final product of Destroyer, it was just you running around the Atlantic, dropping depth charges, mission after mission after mission. It was literally a one-trick pony. Furthermore, as of early 2025, the last time Destroyer the U-boat hunter was updated was in April of 2024. And even then, that update was merely an optimization update. As far as I can tell, the game has been pretty much abandoned by its developer, Iron Wolf Studios. And they're currently working on Sherman Commander, a tank sim. Whether or not they'll come back and add anything new to Destroyer is up in the air, but my worry here is that, like, I'll get so used to playing Task Force Admiral, and this is true with just about any game, is that if you play any game long enough, you'll know its mechanics, and you know what it's capable of, what it's designed to do, and what it is not designed to do. What I kind of call certain metagaming, so you can outwit and outthink the game. He's like, yes, I know the game will not do this, that, or the other, you know, so I can work my way around it. But I suspect Task Force Admiral won't fall into like the whole one-trick pony rut, because there's different domains in naval warfare that are being modeled aside from air warfare and carriers and surface warfare and all that. So I don't think it'll fall into that rut. And furthermore, they'll have the inclusion of a mission editor, which means that players will be able to create their own scenarios. My hope is that Dry Dock Dream Games continuously supports this game and squashes the bugs and improves the gameplay mechanics with successive iterations and volumes of the game. So I can foresee a future where more volumes of this game, like Volume 2 or 3 or whatever, take place in later years of the Pacific. Now that said, I'm not entirely sure the game engine currently will be optimized for something on such a massive scale, right? If we were to try to play like the Battle of the Philippine Sea in June of 1944, yeah, that battle had like 7 fleet carriers and 8 light carriers on the American side alone. And this isn't even getting into all the escorting battleships, the cruisers, the destroyers, and the hundreds upon hundreds of aircraft that were in that battle. Now, if we take a look at like the order of battle for the American forces during Leyte Gulf in October 1944, for the battle off Samar alone, there were 12 escort carriers in Task Force 77. And that's just a small part of the whole Battle of Leyte Gulf, which by some metrics is the largest naval battle in history. So when you think of massive engagements like Philippine Sea or Leyte Gulf, I could only see those being feasible in this game if the player commanded like a single task force in that game and have the rest of the units of the fleet being controlled by the computer. Or for something like the Battle of Leyte Gulf, you definitely have to divide that up into various smaller scenarios to make things more manageable. Like there's no way the player, or the game I think, could control and render the entirety of the Battle of Leyte Gulf all at the same time. It would be insanely taxing on the game engine and a computer. So similar to how Volume 1, right, the various battles are broken up into smaller scenarios in 1942. So I think it would be something like that. Now, future volumes will also add other playable sides. You know, eventually, perhaps someday, we're going to have the Japanese as a playable side. Maybe even possibly multiplayer, I don't know. Or you could even transpose this game into another theater, right? You could imagine, like, modeling parts of the Indian Ocean, right? Or the Mediterranean, or the Atlantic, right? So you can easily see this game, you know, with that, with different sides, like the British Royal Navy, or the French, or the Italian, or whatever, so on and so forth. But anyway, all this is still up in the air. It's a very tall order, and I'm not holding my breath. It could all come crashing down, or it could take years and years and years to implement. You know, I can't just wave a magic wand and expect all this to just fall into our laps tomorrow. All right, our forces seem to have disengaged with the enemy. Do you wish to stay in the flag plot? No. Let's go to debriefing. All right, well, we got a strategic victory and a tactical defeat. Port Moresby was saved, but at what cost? With the victories like these, the War Department and our Australian allies will have no reason to doubt the Navy's commitment to its duties. But how long can we sustain this pace with such crippling losses in men, ships, and aircraft? As a new battle looms closer to home in the Hawaiian chain, the fate of the theater hangs in the balance, and there's no telling how this new operation will unfold. All right. Well, ultimately our score was a negative 1,191 points. Yeah, didn't do too well there. Well, anyway, we're going to have more to play in this game, so I might eventually get on to playing of Cranes and Patriots, the playable scenario in this demo version, but yeah, more to come for Task Force Admiral. And again, I'm really excited to see how this game is going to play out. So